This is a role of Adam's descendants. On the day that God created Adam, He made him in the likeness of God. Male and female He created them. He blessed them and gave them the name man when they were created. When Adam was 130 years old, he fathered a son in his likeness, after his image, and he called him Seth. Adam lived for 800 years after the birth of Seth, and he fathered sons and daughters. In all, Adam lived for 930 years, then he died. When Seth was 105 years old, he fathered Enosh. After the birth of Enosh, Seth lived for 807 years, and he fathered sons and daughters. In all, Seth lived for 912 years, then he died. When Enosh was 90 years old, he fathered Kenan. After the birth of Kenan, Enosh lived for 815 years, and he fathered sons and daughters. In all, Enosh lived for 905 years, then he died. When Kenan was 70 years old, he fathered Mahalalel. After the birth of Mahalalel, Kenan lived for 840 years, and he fathered sons and daughters. In all, Kenan lived for 910 years, then he died. When Mahalalel was 60 years old, he fathered Jared. After the birth of Jared, Mahalalel lived for 830 years, and he fathered sons and daughters. In all, Mahalalel lived for 895 years, then he died. When Jared was 162 years old, he fathered Enoch. After the birth of Enoch, Jared lived for 800 years, and he fathered sons and daughters. In all, Jared lived for 962 years, then he died. When Enoch was 65 years old, he fathered Methuselah. Enoch walked with God. After the birth of Methuselah, Enoch lived for 300 years, and he fathered sons and daughters. In all, Enoch lived for 365 years. Enoch walked with God, then was no more, because God took him. When Methuselah was 187 years old, he fathered Lamech. After the birth of Lamech, Methuselah lived for 782 years, and he fathered sons and daughters. In all, Methuselah lived for 969 years, then he died. When Lamech was 182 years old, he fathered a son. He gave him the name Noah, because he said, "Here is one who will give us, in the midst of our toil and the laboring of our hands, a consolation out of the very soil that Yahweh caused." After the birth of Noah, Lamech lived for 595 years, and he fathered sons and daughters. In all, Lamech lived for 777 years, then he died. When Noah was 500 years old, he fathered Shem, Ham, and Japheth. God and creator of mankind. When you created Adam and Eve, you willed that they should be fruitful, multiply, and fill the earth. We ask you this day to make all families of the world faithful to your will, and grant that those who are seeking for children and families to call their own will not be left forsaken, for you are God who lives and reigns forever and ever. Amen.